Supernatural Season 12, Episode 13, Family Feud. This was an interesting episode. They bring back Gavin, and I was waiting to see what they were going to do with that character ever since Crowley saved his own son. I was like, what's going to happen with him? What are they going to do to utilize that character? He's Crowley's son, he's got to do something important, and it wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't think that they would bring him back just to get rid of him in this episode. It was kind of sad. I personally, I love the way this episode played out with the main ghost storyline. I think we had 3 different stories in this episode, but the main one was focusing on this ghost and them trying to figure out how to solve this problem and how do they get rid of a ghost that is tied to, basically, they mentioned, we can't get rid of her bones because she's tied to her body, which is like, 10,000 leagues under the sea. So how do we deal with that? And then, destroying the locket, that could do it, but it wasn't 100%, which I thought was weird that they didn't bother trying. They kind of just jumped to, like, let's just go ahead and go to this next thing. Because technically, they probably could have found the thing. They were still at the house the whole time. They technically could have found the locket. It was still on that one woman's jacket. I would assume at least, but it was like, no, in order to kind of solve things 100%, which would also, instead of just solving the problem now, would have prevented the problem from existing, they send Gavin back in time so that he can actually be with his girlfriend and, they can both kind of live on. And I thought that was interesting, just the way all that stuff played out. And it was just pretty crazy, like the way that it all worked out in the end, where it was kind of sad. It was like, it was kind of good, but it was also still kind of sad the way it had to play out. Because, of course, he was freaking out, like, when they're doing the chant, and he's like, it looked like he had like a necklace in his hand, which I don't believe was the locket, but he had something just to like cover the blood up, and it looked like it was a little necklace the way it was shot. But he looked nervous, and it was like, it's understandable. He's dying in one of the weirdest ways possible. He's basically sending himself back in time a little bit, like they didn't actually do it, but in a sense that's what they were doing, so that he would become a ghost like her, and that way they could live on forever. And she would not become the vengeful spirit that she was, and it would save all those teachers, and even the death from the beginning of the episode saved that woman's life as well. So it was kind of a bittersweet way to do it, and I thought it was very interesting how it all played out. And we get the reveal at the end for Rowena. That was super dark for her. I was like, wow, like that ultimately, all that stuff that was happening, and the moment, especially with Crowley when he's trying to stop them from taking Gavin away. I love that sequence too, when she like freezes him in place, and they leave and he's just trapped there and he can't save his own son. And he finds out at the end, it was like, it was all for revenge because of what he made her do to get rid of the Mark of Cain, which was kill the one person that she like truly loved and who she gave immortality to. And it was just nuts. I was like, wow, I did not expect that to be the way that all played out. Like, she did not care about Gavin, and she mentioned like, it was the right thing to do. It was like, maybe for Gavin, but certainly for me, just to see you suffer the loss of a child. I was like, wow, that made it like such a dark move for her, but I loved it. It was just those 2 characters, and oddly enough, I think this is comparable to what he did for her. I would personally say it's worse because it's his actual son, but considering her character, that is, I mean, clearly she doesn't care about her own son, so I guess it is like the exact same thing, because she never felt that way about her own child, but she loved that guy like crazy, and she had to, kill him in order to basically save the planet. So I love that ending. It was just like, wow, that was just dark. It got super, super dark for the 2 of them, but I love that. The other story we have in this episode is, of course, Lucifer's child. Lucifer, in this episode, we get, kind of the explanation as to why he was there and why his body didn't go back to the cage and all that stuff. And I like the way they explained it, except for like the one part where Crowley was like, yeah, we found your body like a few years ago. I didn't think that made any sense, because he'd been in the cage the whole time, and it just didn't make sense why he said, we found your body a few years ago and stuff like that. I was like, that was a weird line of dialogue, because he'd been in the cage as, Mark Pellegrino. That's the best way I can think to put it, but Mark Pellegrino was the actor in the cage, and it was that physical body, just like when Sam was actually in the cage, it was still Sam's body, even though he was taken over. Physically, it was still Sam's vessel, so it didn't make sense that they needed to find the other vessel not really, at least not to me. I mean, I would have assumed after he jumped into cast, it was just like the body's just kind of there. So it was weird that he said we found it like a few years ago, and I don't know. It just seemed weird to me. I was like, I don't know if that was my timing is off, or it was like, that only was last season, if I'm remembering right. So there's no reason it should have been a few years. I don't think they even skipped a year between this season and the last. They may have, because they typically try to keep up with the actual year that it is. But it was just weird. I was like, I don't understand why he said we found your vessel a few years ago and we fixed it. And he also says we improved it. And that I'm curious to see, what did they do? He'd already gotten to the point where his vessel was fine for everything that was kind of happening. So, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's crazy the way it was all playing out because, well, actually, no. Okay, I think I'm starting to remember things the way they actually fit together. So I guess that makes sense that they had to find his body a few years ago. We were just seeing the actor, but technically it was Sam's body. So I guess that makes sense. I don't know. It was just really weird. I guess I wasn't thinking about it as I should have. I was thinking about Mark Pellegrino, but technically it was Sam's body that he was in, not Mark's. But I wish I could remember that actual. I don't remember if he even had a name before he was just Mark Pellegrino as Lucifer. But that vessel, the original vessel, that's interesting. I guess I never considered it that way because, of course, when we see the devil, we see Mark Pellegrino. They don't use a different person outside of this season for very specific reasons. So I guess now it actually makes a ton of sense now that I think about it. Because I'm like, it was always that vessel, but technically that was his angelic form, but they do have to have an actor to portray that, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have a different actor. Okay, I get it now. I went through the slow process. It took me over an hour as I was watching the entire episode. Didn't figure that out, but it makes sense. It actually does make sense now. So that works. It does work. Still confusing because of just the way they have to do it, where if there was any other way to do it, he would have just been like, I don't know, whatever the devil really looks like, because of course they can't show what angels actually look like, and they don't show what demons actually look like, so it has to be Mark Pellegrino whenever it's a representation of the devil. So it makes a lot of sense now. I get that. It was just really weird because they still have to use the same actor to say like, hey, this is Lucifer in the cage. They have to have a certain body, otherwise he's just going to be glowing or floating darkness the whole time, I guess. I don't know. But going through it, he ends up being trapped. Crowley mentions that he had angels work on, or demons work on the cage down to the molecular level. So they recreated the materials of the cage into the chains that Lucifer is now stuck in. So he's trapped for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 episodes, because of course by the end of the episode, the whole time he was cocky and everything because that's him, but of course he knows oh, I've got help on the outside. Not only is my child still alive, which Crowley didn't actually know, but now I have one of my lieutenants coming in to help my child be born, and of course she'll come and get me as well, and we can kill everybody. So excited to see how that plays out. Kelly ends up being found by angels, but both of them get taken out by Gagan, I believe is how you say it. It's just weird because every time I see it I'm just thinking dragon, but it doesn't take the R out. But she ends up saving her. She gets the Terminator line, come with me if you want to live, which I appreciate it. But her whole thing is she just wants the baby to be born. So we have a Knight of Hell walking around protecting, Rosemary, as she put it, which was a really good reference, even though I hate that movie. She's protecting her, and Lucifer now knows that by the end of the episode, and I'm very curious how that's going to play out. Naturally, because of stupid Riverdale, we still don't get promos. I don't know how long they're going to do that, as if people don't know that show's coming on after Supernatural. That's been getting on my nerves lately. I got it the first week, maybe in the first 2, but I'm pretty sure this is the 4th, if not the 5th episode, and they keep doing that, and we have to go online to get the promos now, and it's starting to drive me insane. But still looking forward to the next episode. Really enjoyed this one. It's good to get that explanation for what was going on with Lucifer, and how he came back and why he wasn't sent back to the cage and stuff like that, and why he was just on Earth. So it made a lot of sense. Like I said, of course, I had to figure out the whole 6-year thing because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But Mark Pellegrino is just the visual representation. It didn't technically mean he was in that vessel. So now I get that because after what 6 effing years, of course I'm gonna forget that that's how that played out. I just see Mark Pellegrino and I think, yeah, he's in that vessel again, but technically that wasn't the case. So had to figure that one out. Took me a minute, but enjoyed this episode. Very excited to see where they're headed. I mentioned this in last week's episode, or my last review. With the whole Knights of Hell sort of deal, it'll be interesting to see how they utilize them, because with this being the second half of the season, how long are they going to keep them in there? Are we going to have Kelly give birth to this child? Are we going to lose Dagon? Are they going to show us the other knight that was mentioned, or the prince that was mentioned before? So there are a lot of elements to that, and with them being so insanely powerful, there's also a lot to that. Of course, the cult doesn't make much of an appearance this time around, so we'll see how that plays out. And of course, that can't work on Lucifer, but I would assume it works on everyone beneath him. So that could easily be a way as to how they take them out. But I'm really curious how that's going to work. Like, are we going to get both of them both of the other knights by the end of this, or like how is it going to play out? Are there princes and princess? Because the Knights of Hell is an actual thing, so I can't call them knights. But the prince and the princess, just how that stuff is going to play out. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. We don't get much of it in this episode, but the other storyline, of course, is Mary working still with the British Men of Letters. And I like that it ended the way that it did, where she decides to just tell Sam and Dean, this is what's happening, and plain and simple, this is how it's going to work, as far as she's concerned at least. And Sam's like, we have a history with them, and they go through like the montage of showing all the different characters, and I like that. I was like, I like the fact that she decided to tell them fairly early on. I mean, it was the last episode and then this one, and that's it. And she's like, look, I'm working with them, melting Rougarou brains and stuff with that cool looking gun that they made, but we'll see where it goes. I mean, they talk about how, like, we have our weaponry and stuff like that. It's worked so far, and for other obvious reasons, we don't want to work with them based on torture and all that madness. So, she's decided to work with them and use their weapons to take out demons and monsters and things like that. But she's going to have to convince Sam and Dean, and probably Cass, who is oddly absent in this. I don't know why he was absent. Maybe it was just, Misha Collins couldn't be in this episode. He's sick. I don't know. But it seemed weird that he wouldn't be able to just show up in this. I mean, like just be there in the background or something. I don't know. It's just weird that he wasn't there at all. So it's always weird now, especially when it's like everything's so weird and chaotic. Even though it's calm right now, everything's still kind of odd and chaotic. And it's just like, it's weird when they don't show up in every episode. Just they're for whatever reason missing, especially Cass. Like, if Mary wasn't in an episode, it's like, yeah, okay, she left and she, that's her thing. But for Cass not to be in an episode, especially when they were in the bunker for quite a while in this episode, specifically like during the end, and there's some other portions as well, and it's just like, weird not to see him, in the bunker. So, the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode, he's just somewhere else. I don't know, but still enjoyed it, and I'm definitely excited to see where they go with this, and I'm really curious what Cass is going to have to say about Mary working with the Men of Letters, because he's still an angel, so it's like a part of it that makes me wonder, is he going to see both sides of it, where he doesn't like them because of course they hurt Sam and Dean, but he gets it and he kind of trusts it just because it's Mary doing it, so he trusts her, and it's like, well, I hate them but I like you, so he's kind of okay with it. So I'm kind of excited to see how he kind of weighs those two things, like the torture of Sam and Dean versus just trusting Mary and what she's doing. And maybe he won't trust her so much because they did all almost get killed in the last episode because she lied to them. So maybe there's just a part of it. And plus that was bad intel, so she didn't know that was going to happen either. But maybe they would have taken things a little bit differently if that were the case. They would have been able to use some of those weapons if they just knew this, we're going up against this. Just give us a great weapon instead of just going in there like a normal case. So excited to see how that plays out. But of course, would love to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and will Lucifer coming back? and him having having his princess to help his child, and I don't know, who knows what's gonna happen with Kelly. I'm very curious if she's gonna like die in the birth, or there's gonna be some crazy magic thing where it's like, yeah, sorry, we gotta like suck your soul out to like, make the child truly come to life or something crazy. But at this point, Lucifer has his family being protected, so I would love to know where you guys think that's headed, and how he's gonna escape, how fast he's gonna escape, because we know he's getting out. Like, that's just gonna happen. So I would love to know where you think that's headed, and of course, what you guys thought about the episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.